So Thomas Frank has made, let's say, a encouraging start after the defeat at home to Bournemouth before the international break. Kind of put a little bit of a dampener to what has been an encouraging start to the season for Spurs. We can kind of talk, and we will talk about, we've got 3 tactics for you today. The third tactic being the solution to the problem that he had against Bournemouth. They couldn't get out. They lost their duels, which is a massive thing that he talks about. When you're playing against Bournemouth and they're on it, you either have to pass them off the park and break the press, which they didn't, or beat them in the duels. They did neither of those two things. So we're going to talk about the solution. Obviously, the arrival of Xavi Simons, the injury to James Maddison, how that all links in with Damsgaard at Brentford. I will leave a link down in the description to the Brentford video that I did a while ago talking about. So I think it was when he's first announced, and what the Maddison, Damsgaard, and now probably needs to be Xavi Simons' role, needs to be at Spurs to help them beat the press, because the holding midfielders, similar from Spurs to Brentford, are not really pass progressors. Bentancur maybe a little bit, but Paulinho, Pape Sarr, they all want to get on the ball. Great out of possession, probably want to get Pape Sarr a little bit higher up the pitch. But you would kind of say that none of them are really good at progressing the ball. So that's an issue. We'll talk about that. The other 2 tactics are going to be the PSG game and the game against Manchester City. We are going to talk about the Burnley one because that was a pretty bog standard win. All right, let's get into it. Smash a like. All the tactics will be available for the patrons down in the description. Loads of content ready, prepped on my little board there for FM26. So you want to support the channel, get loads of downloads, filters, everything that's going to be coming out very soon. Check out the Patreon, link in the description. So this is the team that they played against PSG. 5-3-2, 3-5-2, whatever you want to call it. Kudus playing as this kind of offset striker role, which, to be fair to both of them, linked up really well, him and Richarlison. Now, as you can see from the average positions, Richarlison was kind of working almost like split strikers at times, where he's working off the left. Kudus there, predominantly down the right, having to really play in deeper areas. Interesting, Danso, the wide centre-back, the right centre-back that we've got here, pretty much playing as a full-back with Pedro Porro slightly ahead of him. Romero, like the ball-playing defender in the middle. Van der Ven, where is he? Van der Ven there, not really getting far forward. Not a great progressor of the ball in terms of passing. His dribbling is very good, though. Love to see him at Man United. Sorry, I bring Man United into everything. I would love to see him as a left centre-back at Man United. Jed Spence, there we go, quite deep, a little bit narrow as well. Didn't get far forward at all compared to Pedro Porro. There's Bentancur with Paulinho, who didn't have many touches of the ball at all. And Pape Sarr playing this sort of like kind of a bit of a box-to-box at times with, as we said, Richarlison leading the line. I think what we're trying to make sure is that, a lot of the times it ended up looking a little bit like this, with a kind of an offset 3-4, 3-2, 3-2, I suppose. Pape Sarr had a little bit more license to get forward. We see that a lot from him. I do really like Pape Sarr and the role that he could potentially have with Spurs this season. Jed Spence was very much more of a defensive fullback, giving the width from Porro. And then obviously the Danso, which is interesting. If I just click onto Danso, as you could see, that's because Jed Spence is not getting so far forward. It means that Mickey van der Ven doesn't need to come around as much. But because Porro is a little bit more aggressive, just a little bit, it allows Kudus then to tuck in, and then that would then naturally bring Danso around. So that's where we're getting that sort of back 4 at times, with Danso, Romero, Van der Ven, and then Jed Spence kind of holding his shit and allowing Porro to be a little bit more attacking down that side. Paulinho was very much box-to-box. I do love him as just a sitting anchor. I think it needs to be one of the two in most of games. Maybe, playing PSG, you could probably say, it needs to be both of them. But with Simons coming in, it probably needs to be Paulinho, Sarr doing the legs, and then a Xavi Simons coming in into here playing in what would be a 4-3-3. But we'll speak about that at the end, don't worry. So that's how we lined up for the PSG game. This is what I've set up for the PSG game. And interestingly, we've played 2 games, right? Last pre-season friendly was PSG. So we've played PSG using the 5-3-2, and then we've just played Bournemouth with the different tactic. I think actually the Xavi Simons kind of tactic to kind of show you what they should have done against Bournemouth. I haven't changed any of those fixtures, by the way. That was just what came up in the game. So as I said, if you want the tactic as a direct download, check out the link down in the description to the Patreon. Muchly appreciated. Like over 100 people in there supporting me as a part-time career is wonderful. So thank you very much. The premise was to make sure that we started defensively really deep. So that's why we've got the 3 sitters in there, but allowing Pape Sarr to go forward. The role of Kudus and a couple of player instructions. The offset wing backs with Pedro Porro being a little bit higher, but not being as kind of aggressive as you might think. So that's why we've got the defence and support combo. So starting off, we've got Vicario in goal, sweeper keeper on defend, no playing instructions. Kevin Danso, now because of that kind of heat map that we showed you with his movement, we've got him on support to be a little bit more aggressive, moving into that area that's been vacated by Pedro Porro. Ball playing defender on cover. I like to make sure that when I have my middle centre back to be an old fashioned kind of libero, that they sit off and sweep a little bit. So we've gone cover for Romero with, of course, tackle harder. And then Mickey van der Ven. I didn't want to go ball playing defender because he isn't one for sweeping long passes. I wanted to have dribble more on because that's what he likes to do. But in this scenario, he wasn't dribbling more for this game. It was very much just defending. So we've gone wide centre back on defend. Left back, Jed Spence. We've just got him as a wing back on defend with the right side in Porro, wing back on support. Now, Paulinho, because he was kind of offset on this right-hand side a little bit, we've gone ball-winning midfielder on support. He did get further forward, perhaps better pressing, when they want to press high, Spurs. Paulinho's probably better at covering the ground than Bentancur. Well, he is. So that's why then maybe they were set like they are. The anchor in Bentancur, I think in certain games as well, he will more likely be a DLP. So I think when it becomes to maybe a Sarr and Bentancur double pivot, it'll probably be a DLP on defend with a Volante. But for this game in particular, it was very much that number 6 holding role. With Sarr, Volante, just so he can get forward, start deeper, but get forward and support the front three, especially on this left-hand side, because we're not getting much from Jed Spence out this side. He's going to give us a little bit of verticality down this left-hand side. And then the F's offset forwards, I've just offset it so then Kudus could go into that 2 role, which sometimes they're pressed as a 2 at times. So that's why we've got it offset like that. Kudus, couple of positions, stay wider, just so he starts off this right-hand side a little bit more and run from position. And then Richarlison, no player instructions on the pressing forward on attack. Balanced mentality, standard width, passing to space so we could counter, much more direct passing with slightly higher tempo because it was a case of can we get that ball forward? They were looking, especially against this PSG and Man City, can we get the ball forward? Can we win knockdowns? Much more direct, slightly higher tempo, be more disciplined. Of course, Thomas Frank, play for set pieces. In transition, nothing for they did counter press at times, they did regroup at times, they did press quite high, Spurs, a lot of the time. They didn't give them much in that initial sort of like counter press, but I thought just leaving it off was giving it a nice balance. Counter attacking, yes, they were obviously trying to counter attack, and we're asking Vicario to kick long, very long, look, distribute over the opposition's defence, see if we can get in and chase things. Often hitting channels, with Hakimi and Mendes far forward, trying to split those 2 centre halves at PSG, get them wide. And into the outer possession, we've just gone for a bog standard mid block, get stuck in, invite crosses because they're not great in the air. Even though I think the last minute goal, the Ramos goal, I think actually came from a wide area. But anyway, yeah, three centre backs, Van der Ven, Romero, Danso, all decent in the air. We know PSG generally are not going to flood the box with bodies for sort of like general wide crosses. So we'll invite the crosses and stay nice and compact. As I said, we beat PSG 2-1. Now, it was a pre-season friendly, but Barcola, Kvaratskhelia, Dembele, Emre, Neves, Vitinha, Mendes, Hernandez, Marquinhos, Hakimi, Donnarumma, they had a good team. Pretty much full strength. Us on the other hand, we had our team. I set up the team as it was against PSG, even though I've got Xavi Simons, Solanke fit, Kolo Muani. We went with the formation and the team that played. And as you can see, it worked tremendously well. We won 2-1, created some 2 good chances that scored the goals. Kudus been absolutely instrumental, a goal and an assist. Only 35% of the ball, but countered extremely well. So it just shows, I don't think it'll work every single week, but I think if you're wanting to play the game a little bit more realistic and wanting to just, shut up shop at times or hold on to leads and try and stay in the game for as much as possible, we restricted them to nothing because we had that back 5, that 3 in front, and then we had the ability to make the most of the little opportunities that we got. And to be fair, I think we actually countered really well in this game. The goal coming from set piece, second phase of a set piece, causing problems. Kudus at the edge of the area, smashing in. We are going to be good from set pieces, Spurs, with the amount of height they've got in there now. Paulinho, Bentancur, Sarr, Van der Ven, Romero, Danso, one of the strikers as well. So they're going to be lethal set pieces, which was nice. And then the Richarlison goal. So as you can see, we're building. Jed Spence is actually quite far forward there. We've got Pedro Porro, our middle two, Paulinho, into Kudus. This is what they want to do, stretch the line as much as possible. That goal kind of similar to the goal they scored against Manchester City. So we have got much more direct passing on, but we still play. We haven't got play-out defence on, but we're moving the ball forward. So I think something to be aware of, like, you know, we're playing, it's a lovely move, this. Kudus into Richarlison score. So it just kind of shows you that even though we've got much more direct on, doesn't mean your centre-backs are just going to wallop it every single time. So, yeah, maybe something we've underused in FM24, that much more direct. Okay, so that was the first one. So moving into the game against Manchester City, it was Danso out with Brennan Johnson coming in on that left-hand side. Now, I'm not going to say I'm not the biggest fan of Brennan Johnson, especially on the left, because he's so poor with his left foot. I do think he suits this right-hand side, which is going to be interesting because Kudus and who am I thinking of? Kulusevski, when he's back fit, will prefer this right-hand side as well. I do think maybe Jack Grealish on this left-hand side would have been amazing, I do think, as well. When we look at the third tactic, it may even be Richarlison going onto that left-hand side at times. So, back 4-3-3 against Manchester City. Or should I say maybe a 4-2-3-1 with Pape Sarr just ahead of Paulinho and Bentancur, Kudus on the right, Richarlison, and then Brennan Johnson. Obviously, we got the goal. Brennan Johnson scored, didn't he? And it was a really good performance. A little bit of luck at times. Manchester City missed a couple of chances, but I think he changed to this shape because of the probably even more insecurities Manchester City got. We've actually got a Manchester City video coming later on in the week, I think Thursday. So where I'm going to try and fix Manchester City's tactical problems. And one of the things I'm going to speak about in that video is how poor they are at the back and how caught out they get. And I think having that extra man forward and having two guys sat in front of sitting and frustrating Manchester City, a really good working three with that Bentancur, Paulinho and Sarr, with just a little bit more going forward, really played into Spurs' hands for that game. So this is how we looked in the average position. So obviously Vicario not to talk too much about. So Romero on the right-hand side, Mickey Van der on the left. Jed Spence, very wide in this game, which is interesting by the looks of it. Porro doing the same on that right-hand side with Kudus starting wide right, but as you can see, drifting in. With Brennan Johnson in history, I did think he would be a little bit more wider on that left-hand side, but he's playing as almost like an inside forward there. The two sitters in Paulinho and Bentancur, very much too. That is very much Nordgaard, Jensen, Janelt at Brentford. Loves to have two people in front. And then ideally, you want that creative type, but this was a game where, legs, energy, physicality, fast counter-attacks was going to break down Manchester City. Or not break down, but kind of been the way to beat Manchester City rather than, neat passes and looking to play into a nice number 10 in Xavi Simons. And then Richarlison leading the line once again in what is a really nice looking 4-2-3-1. And what they did at times is, once again, played quite long, played into Richarlison to flick on. Kudus came in and then rolled in Johnson, got a little bit of luck, the high line, very close to being offside, but very much allowing those three staying nice and high, allowing the other kind of 7 outfield players to defend and hit early. If you've got a counter-attack, any counter-attack needs to be quick. Couple of safe, maybe 1 or 2 safe, quick passes in to get hold of the ball securely, and then can you play along? Can you exploit the areas that were left? And Manchester City, if you look at Brighton's winning goal, 2 minutes to go, and I think Brighton had a 4v3 on the halfway line, so it just shows the weaknesses at Manchester City at the moment, and Spurs exploited it extremely well. So this is how my Manchester City lineup would look in FM. 4-2-3-1, kind of, but really Pape Sarr is not number 10. He was a very, not aggressive, but yeah, a bog standard box-to-box kind of midfielder. So Vicario we spoke about, I haven't changed anything to him, generally like to go along for this one. Interestingly, game against Burnley, the exact opposite, like to play it from the back, but covering this Manchester City game, Porro, right wing back on defend, will just support Kudus down that right hand side. Romero's the ball playing defender. Van der Ven, centre back on defend this time, with Jed Spence, full back on support. Changed up the two just to give it a nice little bit of a balance. I do like Paulinho playing as the anchor and the DM on support for Bentancur. I think, at times when these two play together, I think maybe Bentancur is going to be potentially a deep line playmaker, but for this game in particular, wasn't able to do the playmakery things that he would maybe generally like to do or has the ability to do. I think ball winning midfielders, any kind of ball winning midfielder on defence, support for any of these roles you'll get by. But I do like to have an anchor in the game. Box to box midfielder in Pape Sarr. Kudus as a winger. Now we've done that, so he gets that wider starting position on that right hand side. But we have got him cutting inside with the ball and roam from position. Brennan Johnson inside forward on attack, because as you noticed, his player positions, it was quite narrow. I think it allowed him to kind of join the front two. He likes to get in behind and chase. That's where we got the goal from. And then Richarlison pressing forward on attack. No player instructions. I think a lot of these will be the same, So standard width, much more direct again. Play for set pieces, be more disciplined, pass into space, distribute over the defence, counter-attacking, mid-block. Yeah, like the setup is the same, but the system is different. And then when we move on to the third tactic in a minute, this is how they really should have played. And we're not going to talk about we'll talk about what they did wrong against Bournemouth and the issues that they had. But these three tactics, so here's the other version. So these three tactics should really be what you have in here. I see too many people, and you play the game however you want, but if you think of how a real life team works, most of the time, the principles are essentially the same, with either a couple of role tweaks, tactical tweaks, formation tweaks. And this is what this is. We're still trying to get the ball forward quickly. The first one gives us much more defensive solidity. 4-3-3, we've got our extra wide play, that extra threat down the left. And then when we're now then moving and looking at dominating games, we've changed it. So we're still playing, slightly more direct. So we've just knocked it down a little bit. We've got another attacker in. We've changed to an anchor and a volante. We've got an extra player in the attacking third. Fullback roles changed a little bit. So it's like three variations of the similar philosophy, and we'll talk about it more in FM26 and see what they throw at us with the new tactics in terms of this and what we can do with all these instructions and things. And for me, this is how you should build a team, build a squad, not having like 4-3-3 super attacking, then a 3-5-2 super attacking, then long passing, short passing. It needs to be generally the same with just tweaks and minor changes between the three. And I think you can see now that these are three tactics, but all very different in terms of shape, but all do similar things with a couple of minor adjustments. So moving into the last one, the game against Bournemouth, I'm going to show you the issues now that they've had. So as you can see, they played this 4-3-3, same team, but this is where they had their problems. We know Bournemouth like to press high. And this is the issue that he had at Brentford at times when he didn't have Damsgaard, was trying to beat a press and try and beat it by passing out. They did it very well against Burnley, but against Bournemouth really struggled. Bournemouth took like the best pressing team in the Premier League, and they struggled to get out. They didn't create enough chances. They got beat in duels. I think their XG for the game. So for the game, expected goals 0.19, no big chances, only 5 shots. Bournemouth had 20 shots because they were turning the ball over high. They couldn't beat the press. It wasn't great. The solution to this, for me, is taking out one of the two. So I'm going to take Bentancur out just for now. And then we're obviously going to bring in Xavi Simons. Okay, we'll bring Sarr back to be a little bit of a double pivot. Simons comes in. We're going to take out Brennan Johnson for now. We're going to move Richarlison to the left because he was so bad against Bournemouth. Brennan Johnson. Koulibaly in, who plays as central forward. So, similar to the Brentford team when they played a 4-2-3-1, they struggled in here because no one was a great progressor. You maybe had a decent dribbler at times who could get out in Sarr. But what they want is someone like Xavi Simons coming in. And what he does really well, and what he got Damsgaard to do well at Brentford, I said I'll leave a link down in the description to the original video that I made about Thomas Frank, and basically kind of showing the similarities in team profile with the holding midfielders, and then also the role of Maddison / Damsgaard and what Xavi Simons is going to do. So I think at times it's going to need a Simons to come in here. And what he does is if he starts high, and then he will come in and try and play, and he'll come exceptionally deep and leave an area. Now, some teams will be super aggressive. So if this is like a number 6, imagine it being maybe Casemiro. Will he want to come all the way in here and leave this massive hole for then these three to work in? Or will he drop off? If he does drop off, then Xavi Simons can get in and can play. If he goes long, then they can maybe play in. Palace are so good at this, of sucking in the pressure, leaving a hole in here, and then playing the ball into Mateta's feet, like a little drifted ball, dinked ball in so he can hold up and then they play off him. So that's what he will try and do with Xavi Simons. Start him high, come in, can he play and progress, not having three profiles. Maybe Pape Sarr could maybe start doing it a little bit. He wasn't, because Bentancur was in there at the weekend against Bournemouth, maybe having Pape Sarr in there who could maybe be a little bit more of a carrier at times. He could maybe go long as well. And I think you'd maybe even at times see Xavi Simons come in there and play and rotate. So something that Thomas Frank's really going to need to work on. The left-hand side is interesting. I've put Richarlison out there just because he's made a really good start to the season. And, Kolo Muani is going to need to play and will be probably, Solanke as well. So I think the idea is that Richarlison potentially is moved out to this left-hand side with Brennan Johnson. You've got Kudus, Kulusevski out on that side. You've got plenty of options in here now once everyone's fit. I mean, maybe even Kulusevski could probably do that one as well in terms of playing in the 4-2-3-1. He would be pretty decent at that. So, how does it look in Football Manager? We've gone with this. Let's just take Bentancur out. Let's get Richarlison in. Let's get Muani in. And let's get Xavi Simons in. So this was the game against Bournemouth that we've played. We played really well, won 5-1. Having plenty of the ball this time. So this is what you'll get against Bournemouth. Playing loads of the ball, but being pressed high. And it worked extremely well. 2.41 XG. Tell coming off the bench. I think Kolo Muani got injured. Tell coming on scoring a hat-trick. Yeah, there you go. Injured, then he managed to score a hat-trick during the game. Simons getting involved. Two assists. So Jed Spence getting involved in his left-hand side. Cut back, Pape Sarr. Yeah, not great goalkeeping, but that Volante role is going to see him get a little bit higher. Like you wouldn't have seen a Bentancur in that role. Paulinho playing in. Look at Xavi Simons, how high he is. Kolo Muani. We've got Kolo Muani as an advanced forward because I think it's so important that he stretches the play for Spurs. Matthias Tell getting involved. Coming on, I think, for Kolo Muani, who was injured at half-time. Richarlison, back to Matthias Tell. Winning the ball, that's what Paulinho does well. And Xavi Simons driving into that area. Releasing Tell. Tell's good in FM. He's just not good in Football Manager. Real life at the moment. Interesting. I think they've even left him out of the Champions League squad, which is... I imagine he weren't too happy with that, but has not really turned it on. FM style, or like two passes that, boof, into Simons. I think Simons is going to really enjoy, at Leipzig. He's had Sesko to play off. He's also played it through to Sesko. He's had a Pender as well. So Xavi Simons, like someone who can cover the ground in front. So I think they'll be absolutely fine. And the only changes we've made, inside forward, AP now on Xavi Simons, dribble more, roam from position, move into channels so we can really drift and roam. Advance forward up there, no play instructions. Kudus, Richarlison roles are the same. Paulinho now just alongside of Volante with the same back five with the goalkeeper. Positive mentality now. We haven't changed the width, but still playing at but now, playing out of defence. Slightly more direct, so we've just knocked it down one. Higher tempo, play for set pieces, be more disciplined. Same thing, we still want the goalkeeper to kick long, but we'll still... those instances in the game where they'll still play it out from the back. Much high line, high press, so we're pressing up and being really aggressive in their half to try and dominate games. That is 3 Thomas Frank tactics. It's weird. When Ruben Amorim was appointed as Manchester United manager, I think in hindsight it's a wonderful thing, isn't it? And I wanted Ruben Amorim over Thomas Frank. I would have preferred to see Manchester United play like this. Been really... not pragmatic, but changing and looking good in terms of in and out of possession, different shapes, different systems. Yeah, it's a shame. It's a shame that he's got to Spurs, but he'll get them going. They may not be amazing. I think that's maybe down to the player quality, but, they've had a really good summer. Paulinho, Simons, Kudus, Muani in, with all the players that they've now got in depth once they're all back fit. I think Spurs will be all right, won't they? All right, check out that Patreon for me. Muchly appreciated. Thank you very much for watching. See you later.